Hi everybody, my name is Lindsay Fraser and I'm going to I'm going to chair this morning session, and I welcome you on behalf of my colleagues from the Lifelong Learning Centre, University of Leeds. So welcome back to those of you, and I can see some familiar names and faces, those of you who've been to our previous week's conversations, and a warm welcome to those of you who are attending for the first time. So we've really been heartened by the interest in our conversations, and it's really great to see so much interest in work with outreach, adult education, and the belonging and support for adult students in higher education. I think we're always conscious that certainly in England, the widening participation agenda tends to be concentrated around what we would call as standard age students. So for those of you who have not been to one of our sessions before, the reason we're doing these conversations is that we thought this was an opportunity for us to review our practice at this particular point in the pandemic, when we hope that there may be some movement, some change from just purely online learning, but we'll see. To share our practice, but also to hear about yours and to look at the common threads and really critically look at our engagement with students. So that's what we're trying to do. In this, the third of the series of conversations, we are looking very much at belonging and relationship building in higher education. So you know that the session is being recorded, and we will be hoping to send out recordings of the sessions after we finished all the conversations. The format of the event, we will be having some case studies, and then we will be breaking into smaller groups to discuss. We are asking people to remain muted whilst others are talking, obviously to put in chat, and we will be inviting questions right at the end of the presentations today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to my colleagues, Jenny and Helen, who are going to take you through a series of activities that we do in the LLC related to belonging and relationship building. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's great to see you all here today. I'm Helen Bowman. I'm the Academic Skills Development Manager for the Lifelong Learning Centre. And Jenny, do you want to just introduce yourself before we go?
Hi, yeah, my name's Jenny Whitfield and I'm the Adult Learners Officer again at the Lifelong Learning Centre, and welcome everyone.
So just before we get started, I'm actually going to ask you to join in a bit by doing a little Mentimeter thing. You're probably all familiar with this, but just to get some ideas from you to know what you're doing, if you could go on to menti.com on a browser and type in the code 4571465, you can type in 3 words which respond to this question: what do you focus on to build belonging and relationships with students? We just thought it would be nice to get what you're doing at the moment, what sorts of things captured in 3 words that you think you need to, or that you do focus on to kind of engage in these activities. Lovely. First one, role models, which is great because you're bringing in things which we're possibly not going to talk about. I mean, I think it underpins a lot of what's around, but it's a really good focus. I'm not going to comment on everything. I just love the way that they build up. Really nice. Mentoring. honesty. Great.
Shared interests as well. That's a nice one.
Which one, Jenny? The
shared interests.
Yeah, really good. Listening, small groups. Great. I hope everybody can see those.
We can share these as well afterwards.
Yeah. Brilliant. Building trust, transparency. I really like that. Yeah, enthusiasm and inductions and openness. Dialogue. Brilliant. Calm, personalized. I love it. Great job done, really.
Yeah. Thank you for coming, everyone.
Yeah. See you later. Bye. Oh, nice. Representation. That's good. Celebrating diversity and everything. Sorry, just reading to you from the screen, all not very good practice, but it's lovely to see all of those ideas captured in one great thing. It's really interesting. Mentoring's coming out so big there.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, I'm going to now move on to our PowerPoint to get us started and help to organize what we're saying to you today. So we're going to be talking about some of our approaches to belonging and relationship building, but hopefully I'm also going to be kind of explaining why we maybe don't use the word belonging very much as well. I'm waiting for it to move to slideshow. Here we are. So if you came to our previous sessions, you'll have noticed that we talked about a lot of activities that we do in outreach, basically working with mature students in community settings and bringing them into the university on either one-off events or for more sustained activity around what we call Jumpstart, which is our program which runs over a number of weeks. So today we're going to introduce you to activities that we do from the point where students probably are moving out of outreach activities and starting to work towards making applications with us. We're going to talk about a number of different activities, and if you do have questions that come to you while we're talking, please do feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll try and keep on top of those questions as we go, so that if they're particularly related to what we're talking about at the time, we'll try and respond to that. We're going to talk about each one of these activities that we do and try to explain what it is, and then try to draw together at the end some of the things that we think are important to us about that kind of underpin our processes when we're thinking about how we're relating to students and helping to make spaces for students to be in the university. So just briefly as an overview, we do a number of things in sort of from April, May onwards, if we're thinking about a yearly cycle. And for the students, this is when they're starting, as I said, to think about making applications to universities. And then we're kind of thinking generally at the beginning, but then the specific activities are around applying to us at Leeds. So over the summer, applying to us at Leeds, students will be invited to outreach activities up to the induction week in September, where we possibly do things like campus walks or art walks around the campus, things maybe about finance and those kind of one-off activities, ad hoc activities, which may be online at the moment, but may also be physical. And we're trying to move more and more to creating spaces that we can use in a COVID-friendly way over this summer. We also have a Facebook page that was mentioned on the Menti, and Jenny will talk about that in a little bit more detail, and that's available to the students sort of from when they kind of come to the end of the outreach activities. Our Keeping in Touch program, again, runs from when they finish outreach all the way through, and Jenny will talk about that in a bit more detail. And when we're talking specifically about making applications, of course, it's often the case that our students, our mature students, don't necessarily have qualifications that are required for entry or that are specified for entry, such as GCSEs, A-levels, BTECs. So we have an alternative entry scheme, which I'll talk about, which they would need to complete before they can be given an unconditional offer. We have a Kickstart program, which is a preparation program for students, a kind of pre-entry developmental program to help them to prepare for their course. And towards the end of Kickstart and into August and September, we last year introduced a chat app where which is a space where students can communicate with one another. So we're going to talk about each one of these things in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to move on to Jenny's going to speak a little bit now about the Return to Study Facebook page.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so as Helen said, our Return to Study Facebook page is open to anybody who has had contact with us in our outreach activity. This could be also people who actually potentially never come to us. They just have an interest in returning to study. So the membership's quite varied. So it can be people who are really quite far away and from thinking about coming to study at higher education. It could be people who are sort of really close to thinking about it. There are also staff members on there, so again starting to build those relationships with current staff and support staff that they might eventually get to meet, and also the outreach members that they will have met in the community. So there's that sort of bridging there with relationships. And there's also learning champions. So learning champions we've mentioned before in our conversations earlier. They're sort of students that come to our groups, and they will have met them at sessions quite often, and they often are really keen to talk to them further. So it's nice to have learning champions on the Return to Study Facebook page for them to continue those conversations with them and ask them questions and hear about and get knowledge from them. So content can, again, it normally is 3 different things. So we normally promote events on there or things that people might be interested in. Also things like upcoming deadlines and things like that, just to remind people. It's a place for people to ask questions and also to sort of celebrate successes as well. So we do sometimes share things about students that have had some sort of success. But we do try to keep it quite student-led where possible. This is a really nice post that got put on recently, and as you can see, it had really great engagement. It's a student who actually we wouldn't have probably interacted with if it wasn't for COVID. So he currently lives sort of down south, and they're going to make the move up to come up here. And they found out that they've passed all the conditions and to getting onto the programme, and they've now got an unconditional offer. They're a mature student, and yeah, so it's really nice that he sort of shared, obviously very excited about coming onto programme. I can see that so Paul and Lauren are both our student support officers, so that it's nice that they're obviously engaging with that post as well. And you can see below that 2 people who've commented out of the 36 comments. But Bev's put in the post about commenting on it as well. So Bev's obviously a member of that community, which is great. But there's 2 learning champions from different years who've posted on there, being really nice. And one of the really good things on the bottom comment, it says "Welcome to the Lifelong Learning Centre family," which I really like, and already making them feel like they're part of something. So that's the Facebook page. I don't think I've missed anything. Helen, do you want to move on?
Joanne just asked if this is available to anybody or only those people who are applying to Leeds.
Anyone, yeah. So it's not for people who are just coming to Leeds. It's again completely impartial with the things that we offer. So yeah, so we can have people on there who potentially can go somewhere else, or they might do a foundation year with us and go somewhere else, or they might, like I say, not ever come to university. They might just have thought of it and not ever got to make that step. Is there any other questions?
No.
Nope. Lovely. Okay, so this is the Keeping in Touch programme or offer. So as Helen said, we offer this to people who've often done Jumpstart and also people who have an offer with us or at the University of Leeds, and then also people potentially who defer. So just to keep them engaged with us, and they can engage with different activities. It's very much aimed at sort of the extracurricular stuff, so getting them to come on campus, getting them to meet current students, getting them to meet different staff members, and getting them to feel like they feel settled by the time they start their programme, so they hit the ground running, so to speak. it's very tailored and it is optional, so not everybody would potentially join this, but there are specific events that are just assigned to this programme, so that they do get sort of really tailored nice events, such as the Read and Chat, which is a sort of a reading group that runs sort of 4 to 6 weeks. One thing that's been a shame that we haven't been able to do because of the pandemic is we did an Explore with the LLC series as part of Keeping in Touch, and it was a really nice way of people coming onto campus. We had a theme, so they did a surprise session as well. So often we find that students don't necessarily want to sort of step out their comfort zone sometimes, and they need that little nudge. So we did things like singing and crocheting, and then we did a themed campus tour around that. So for example, the crocheting, we actually had a tour around textiles and a really nice interesting talk from somebody who worked in that building. And then the singing, we did a tour of the theatre spaces on campus. So again, getting people to see places that they might not see when they're on their programme, and getting them to really feel like they're part of the campus and all the different things that they have available to them, and just feeling generally more comfortable in the space. So this year we asked people again what they want to see from the Keeping in Touch programme, so we've tailored it around what they've suggested. So we've got a bi-weekly newsletter with tips from current students, and they get introduced to a different member of staff each week. Again, support staff or outreach team, and some of the welcome desk team, for example, people they'll get to see when they actually become a student. And the bespoke events, like I say, like the Read and Chat and campus tours and things like that. Helen?
Thank you, Jenny. So Keeping in Touch runs all through the summer, but what starts to happen is that when people make applications, of course, then the university becomes, it kind of starts to occupy that other space of gatekeeping. And this is quite an uncomfortable position for us, isn't it? Because we're trying to be really, you know, we want to be accessible and inclusive, but then we end up asking people to have certain qualifications and to meet certain conditions in order to be given an offer of a place at the university. What we have is an alternative entry scheme, which involves matriculation exams. Like several other institutions, this is the approach that the university takes. We take control of those exams and we write them ourselves, and we try to approach this as a kind of, we try to set it up as a joint venture with the student, with a series of support, a sort of program of support available, so that when a student is informed that after interview that they would need to, and they all have interviews either over the phone or face to face. So when a student is informed that they may need to engage with the alternative entry scheme and maybe do one of either the English or the maths exams, and these are at different levels to satisfy level 2 and level 3 entry requirements, we then contact them. We send them videos, information about how to approach the exams and what the exams will consist of, and then we also contact them individually, either, well, usually by email and by phone, in order to kind of work out what their particular areas of confidence are, where they think their strengths lie, and the areas where they feel like they're going to need more development. We try to make sure that we talk to everybody. Not everybody engages with the support that we offer. Often people are more nervous about maths, so we have a dedicated maths tutor who supports pre-entry work. She works very closely with students to identify the specific areas of the exam that are going to be difficult for them. They see a sample paper before they do the exam, and she also then tries to get them involved with group workshops where they can talk to one another as well. And again, not everybody takes this offer up, but it does mean that people have a number of opportunities to talk through areas that they might feel less confident about. We also invite students to raise with us if they want to talk about any specific learning difference that they've had recognised previously, or that they may suspect but have never explored previously. And we have a dedicated teaching fellow who works in this area, who will then talk to the students, so that then following his advice and guidance, we can offer extra time in exams, and he can also advise applicants on strategies as well. We also make applicants aware that they have a resit opportunity like any other assessment at the university, which often helps to make them feel a little bit more confident about approaching the exam, that it isn't the only opportunity that they will have to succeed, and just going through that process. progress can be helpful in terms of, you know, I've been very pleased with the students who have experienced failure at this point. We had 6 students who failed last year, 4 of whom resat and passed, and their approach to that and their feedback about that was that it was quite a positive experience, even for somebody who then had to defer for another year, because we've managed to keep that relationship going and work with that applicant again throughout the year towards the next round of matriculation exams. During last year, kind of threw everything up in the air. We usually run the exams on campus, so students have to take time to come onto campus to do the exams. Last year, we eventually managed to get all the exams onto Gradescope and run them online, which has been actually very useful for many students who work, obviously, full or part-time. We can open the exams for 24 hours so that they're able to choose when to engage with the exam, and then it's time limited once they start the exam. We also managed, of course, to do extra time through the online platform, which makes it possible to respond to students who have specific requirements. We've continued to provide support over the phone and online. I think that's one of the best things we did last year, quite quickly in those last few days before we left campus, was to be able to forward our work phones to our mobiles and to work out how we can make calls to applicants via our mobiles, you know, using the privacy settings. So that's been a bit of a win this year, and we would definitely, well, we are considering how we can integrate online exams into our future work in this area as well. Alongside the alternative entry exams, we also, over the summer, are trying, and really from April onwards, we're trying to give applicants the opportunity to prepare for the courses that they're going to be studying as well. So we've developed over the last 6, 7, 8 years our Kickstart programme, and that is offered to all it's a strong recommendation for all of our students. So really we expect all of our students to engage with this in some way. And we have a variety of sort of formats for this program, depending on which course the students are going on to. So we have about 350 students each year who go through Kickstart. And it's basically a variation on these 4 different activities. So we host this on Blackboard. So it's a bit similar to Minerva, so which is our VLE. So the students do get kind of used to using that kind of setup. We make this available to them for a few weeks before we invite them to an online, a live session, which used to be on campus and this year has had to go, and last year had to go online. So the students work at their own pace. The lessons are broken down, structured. We attempt, you know, to use a lot of videos and interactions. They engage with activities like note making, and then send us some reflections on the process of note making and what they found useful. We introduce sort of a section on understanding essays and how to break down essay questions, and then we introduce sources focused around a particular essay question related to their course. So although it's kind of generic activities, it's tailored to their specific course as well. So we have specific essay questions that relate to their course, and sources that we provide, 2 or 3 sources that we provide that they can use to help to explore that particular subject in a little more depth. They come to the live session in groups, course-based groups, so they start to meet students who are going to be on the course with them once they start in September. And on campus, we were able to offer lunch and leave them to explore campus a little and have lunch together, and to bring them in and be in the kind of teaching spaces that they might experience once they're on course. During COVID, we've done these online. Last year we did them on Blackboard Collaborate, and this year we're doing them on Zoom, so that we have that opportunity to use the gallery and the video settings a bit more easily. Part of the live session is also the opportunity to meet with our student support officer, who talks through fears and hopes of coming to university, can really kind of interact with the students in terms of what they're hoping for, the types of things that are worrying them, give them a bit of information about the next steps, you know, the things they really have to do about finance and meeting their conditions of offer, and that really helps to break down how the students are feeling and get them to talk to one another a bit as well. And then we do a bit of a session on the essay writing or maths. If they're science students, we do some maths work in Kickstart as well. 2 weeks after they've done the live session, they submit an essay. It's 1,000 words for most of the courses, a bit less for the preparation for higher education. And that's then passed on to the tutors and is used for feedback once they're on course. So that's a little bit of gold, really, having some writing from the students. And we support them through that process. They get to submit a paragraph for some feedback, and we give feedback through all of the online lessons and through the essay submission. So that allows us then to be kind of identifying with students things that they maybe could be working on over the rest of the time before the course finishes. I think absolutely key is that we get to talk to students a lot, therefore, over the summer, right through from April. We run sessions for mature students from April. We give feedback on their activities, as I've said, and they get the opportunity to interact, although that's been less, of course, since the pandemic. Hopefully that builds some reassurance and helps to build some confidence, but clearly there are different levels of confidence for students coming into this situation. We really miss the students having more opportunities to interact over lunch and in those kinds of spaces. So that's something that we're going to look forward to getting back on campus next year, although the online live session is useful for students who are not currently in Leeds and might reduce the need to travel for some of those students, or the students who are actually abroad or away over the summer. And finally, after we've done Kickstart, we invite students to differ, and Jenny's going to explain what differ is.
Yeah, just a reminder, guys, if you want to ask questions as we're going along, that's absolutely fine. We can pause, but we will stop at the end as well. So, yeah, question, Helen.
So, Natalie, it used to be a condition of some students' offer. When the pandemic struck, we quite quickly just decided we'd just take that off because we just didn't know how that was going to pan out. And so what we do is make it a strong recommendation. The letters are worded in such a way as to make it clear that basically they're expected to do it, and if they don't do it, everybody else does it. I hope that makes sense. We get a lot of engagement with it. Thank you. Okay,
so if that's it for questions, I will move on, but again, feel free to ask questions as we go along. So Differ is a chat app, and last year, for the academic year 2020, we used it at the start of the academic year. I had been looking at different things. We had Facebook groups, so we had different Facebook groups for each of our programmes, and they sort of started to be used a lot less over a period of time. And I wasn't a fan of the fact that they weren't necessarily inclusive, in that not everybody was on Facebook. Yeah, so it didn't really feel like the full community was there, and some were a lot more successful than others. I knew that some groups use WhatsApp, but again, some people were excluded from those groups for one reason or another. So I was really interested in finding something that sort of fit everything. So I'd found Differ before the pandemic, but the pandemic sort of exacerbated the need for it, really. So we progressed with using it. It is designed with university students in mind. It's inclusive in the fact that all you need to do is upload a photo, and it doesn't even have to be a photo of your face. You don't share any other personal details. It's designed to be really informal, sort of creating that space outside of the classroom. And the functionality as well, there's some really nice functions in the fact that you can ask a question, which is potentially anonymously to start with. Students can create their own communities, and there's some really nice icebreakers as well. So there's a chat bot in the space that will introduce you to another student, so you can really get to know other students that you might not normally meet as well. So how it worked is we recruited digital student mentors. So we had 16 mentors across all the different programs. We invited students by email. So this was to people who had done Kickstart, so a little bit before induction week, so not beginning of September time, and we had communities for each course as well as year group, and also a community for the whole of the Lifelong Learning Centre. So most people were in 3. Again, if they were on a foundation year, then they might have just been in 2. And like I say, there was a chatbot in the space called Bo, which had those different functions. During the time of using it, we had over 280 users. There was 8,700 messages sent, and the app was opened over 24,000 times. So there's quite good engagement with that app. If you move on, please, or slide, please.
It's just not responding, Jenny, at the moment.
It's all right, I can move on. So the next slide, when we get there, does have an image of a Mentimeter. So we asked students what they thought of Differ. And we used a Mentimeter. Oh, too far, Helen. There we go. So we asked students what they thought of Differ really at the beginning. So it was just into induction week, just to get just a sense check of where people were at with Differ. And as you can see, the biggest 4 things were useful, helpful, friendly, and easy. So we sort of took that as really positive. The one thing that we've learned as well is that Bo, the chatbot, actually wasn't integrated until sort of the 2nd week of using it. So it did sort of change slightly, and we weren't quite 100% sure about the functionality of the chatbot. So we got to know him as we went along, and we've learned quite a lot from getting to know him in those last few weeks. But you can see there that some of the people thought that it was confusing and some childish, ineffective. So it wasn't 100% positive, but we did learn a lot as we went along. Next. So we asked, we put out a survey, and we got 27 responses. We did have some focus groups as well after using the app, and you can see there that 15 people felt like it increased their sense of belonging. Again, positive. Just some really nice feedback, people saying that they really felt that Differ helped them because they didn't have their unconditional offer yet, because they hadn't got their GCSE certificates. And I'm sure it's the same everywhere, but they don't have access to any systems, like they haven't got access to their email or anything IT wise. So they felt really sort of excluded from being able to talk to people. And the fact they had Differ, where everybody was on there and they could talk to those people and they've got reassurance. They felt like it really helped them at the start of the academic year to feel more settled when they began. Another really nice piece of feedback was that a student was on Differ, and they just sort of connected with their peers online, and then they had to go onto campus to get their ID card. Obviously with the pandemic they hadn't been onto campus at all, and they were a mature student, and they were quite shocked by how sort of standard aged it was, and they didn't really see anybody that they could relate to, but they felt really reassured that they had that online space online to be able to communicate with their peers, and knew that they were sort of a place that they belonged online, if you like. Everybody thought it was a great way of making those initial connections. The mature student communities were a lot more positive than the standard age communities. So the foundation years, a lot of people did join, but then they shared a link to a WhatsApp chat, and then people left, which again we were happy with that, and we expected that to an extent, because we sort of knew that the standard age students do tend to prefer WhatsApp. The mature students really liked Differ for the fact it was separate to personal life, and that it was a university thing, and they could keep the 2 things separate. And I think that's it. There's
questions, Jenny?
Yeah.
So about the Facebook page and about safeguarding with Differ.
So
can you see them?
Is Helen first? Have you? So we didn't have anybody making comments. So we didn't have, I didn't mention, sorry, but it was purely student led. So there wasn't any tutor presence or anything on the app. I was just there in the background just to, to help support the mentors. But we did deliver training to the mentors around negative issues, and to make sure they just let us know. But nothing came up at all. It was all, fine. So yeah, so we did make allowances. That's not the right word, but yeah, we sort of prepared for it, but it didn't happen, if you like. So I hope that answers your question, Helen. And Ali, how did you encourage interaction on the page between students and create a community that allows for students to feel comfortable sharing there without feeling monitored? So the Return to Study Facebook page has different peaks and troughs, to be honest. Like I said, the post that I shared recently has really sort of generated a lot of interaction, which was really great. And it was different times of year as well, where I think that things sort of, it feels more buzzy, if you like, on there. And it's definitely better when students are sharing content rather than ourselves. We have had virtual learning champions. We trained them over a period of time, and we did have them more actively posting things and trying to engage with the page, which does work to an extent, but then it means the students sort of giving up quite a lot of time to actively do that. So we've sort of let it just stay quite organic, to be honest, Ali, and it could be a lot better, and we could generate that content, but it's definitely the successes, I think, is one of the things that really does have the best engagement and encourages more people to sort of comment and share their own successes. I hope that sort of answers that question. Should I say I made sure students were projected to issues? Yeah, so I kept monitoring on all the chats, like well, several times a day. I was just making sure that everybody, you know, there wasn't any issues at all. I suppose because there a lot of people we deal with mature, you know, expecting them to be adults and, you know, behave in such a way. But like I say, we did have training around that with the mentors, just to make sure that it sort of tell us if they were unsure of anything or they were worried about anything. But like I say, we didn't have anything. It was all really positive, really. And yeah, there were really nice conversations.
We're thinking about it as the one of the people who wrote the program, who kind of runs Differ, talks about it as the corridor. It's kind of recreating the corridor online, and it is that kind of, it's a space for students that we wouldn't normally be active within. So it's kind of trusting them a bit. It's a bit weird because I could also see some of the communities, and I had to stop myself from posting anything because I was so tempted, you know, because they were asking questions of one another, which were really things that I would normally deal with. But actually, the students just dealt with that. They just didn't deal with it in the way that I necessarily would have started to deal with it. But by the end, they had resolved those issues, which was quite an eye-opener for me as well. It stopped me, which was good. Yeah.
It's good to make yourself take a step back. I missed anything? No, I think that's it. Yeah, so I mean, for this, we're starting to use Differ again this year, and we have made changes from what we learned last year, and I can share the report that we've done as well in the follow-up information from our findings, if that's helpful for people.
So just to bring that together, really, our thoughts about everything we do, I think, is I'm always really keen on the idea that we're in dialogue with the students about what we do. It's not something that we try to do to them, but sometimes we are forced into that situation in terms of setting them exams. So it's kind of always negotiating that quite difficult terrain of moving between those areas of work. But key for us is that conversation, that discussion all the time. I think there are real, personally, and I know we share this in our discussions in the centre as well, we find sense of belonging is a really popular phrase, but actually it's much more complex than is often, it's often the way that it's talked about doesn't always really interrogate that complexity. And there are difficulties, aren't there, with assuming that there are certain ways of belonging, and that in some ways belonging can become in itself exclusions for some people. So we're really trying to look for where we alienate and to try to help to overcome those, or get rid of, dispel those spaces of alienation and moments of exclusion, or to provide opportunities for students to have other support available to negotiate those bumps in the road that we actually create as an institution. we do think it needs to be varied. The one-size-fits-all approach is always problematic, and that is something that we are always in the danger of moving towards by streamlining processes, and in the institution that can be something that's quite a pressure. We are also always looking for opportunities for students to interact, and COVID has created a real challenge in that way, and it continues to be a challenge. We feel like we've had some real successes with working online, but we know, and the students have been really resilient and successful at working online, and have actually identified that. I think I might have said that in the last session. They've identified that as something that they've learned themselves, but it's still a difficult space to maintain motivation for long periods of time. I think we'll stop there. And
Ali's asked a question, Helen,
oh, yeah.
about just asking what Blackboard.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's because Blackboard is kind of the underpinning owner, isn't it, of a number of different platforms, and it's a version of Blackboard is called Athena, which is for, I think it's used a lot for continuing professional development and training. It's called Training Development Manager, and it's because it doesn't we can upload students to this system. They don't need to have a student ID in order to engage with the system. So at Leeds, that's the system that we use for the activities where we don't need students to already have been registered or enrolled. Because some of the students who will do Kickstart, for example, may never come on our courses. So they may not make us their first choice, or they may actually do the Kickstart course and then also decide to go elsewhere. Having said that, some students last year said that they really appreciated having the Kickstart work to do, and they actually changed their first choice to Leeds because of it. So that was positive.
Ali, do you want to come back on that?
No, that's really helpful. Thank you. Yeah, we basically had exactly the same issue with engaging students who don't have a student ID.
Yeah.
Getting them to like onto our Moodle and things like that. It's been really difficult. So yeah, that's really helpful to know that there's software out there. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a real problem because if you have students registered who then don't progress, they get returned in the HESA figures as well, isn't it? So that's an issue sort of higher up than I realised. Thanks, Lindsay.
Okay, thank you very much, Helen and Jenny. And Helen and Jenny have gone through quite a series of different activities. There's been questions in chat, but if you'd like to ask questions now, please put your mic on and ask. Can I just respond to Tim? Tim, you're asking about numbers of people going on and if they go into vocational. I promise you before the end of the session, I will look at actual numbers. Just to say, if you look at our web pages, you will see that the LLC delivers a range of courses. We've got a range of foundation years, full-time, one part-time. We do our own degree. We also, full-time degree, and we also do part-time foundation degrees with top-up 2 degrees. So I know from our foundation years, we've got over 80% who then progress to the University of Leeds. So that means that some go elsewhere. They will go to elsewhere to do vocational courses, and they will also go into FE. And in relation to progression to FE, I don't know, Tim, if you picked up on the work that we do in advice and guidance, which we talked about in the first section, where people may be referred to FE, and we've got a very strong relationship with our local FE. So I'm not sure if that helps. And I think Fiona's also put in chat that we do some of our own apprenticeship activity, but again, people may be referred elsewhere to do apprenticeships. Okay, any questions?
I did put my hand up just to be polite.
Sorry, Beth.
It's okay,
Sorry,
Lindsay.
I didn't see you.
I recognise that voice.
Beth.
Yeah, I know when you're talking, it's kind of difficult. It's a question really for Helen and also for Jenny, because they tend to see the students first. The students who come in via the alternative route, sort of a bit like myself. Do you have figures on how their end grades? So does that make sense? So say if someone came forward, they didn't have the initial qualifications, does the university keep track of where those students end up, whether they get first, whether they get a 2-1, a 2-2?
We can extract that data, yes.
Yeah. I just thought it'd be quite interesting to know for other students, because if someone's gone through A levels and left school, gone through A levels, they're continually learning. When you've been away, like I've said to you before about the study skills, they're the things that are missing. Yeah. So if someone, say, fails that, and fails getting in via that route, and they defer for a year, what help is given in that year for that student to be successful and move on?
So it depends. If you mean, Bev, that they've failed the matriculation exam,
yes, yeah,
then we can provide some support throughout the year if the student's available to take that up as well.
Yes.
We would also refer them back to the advice and guidance as well. So there may be that Mohammed or Denise might see the student or the applicant and be talking to them about whether they would be better off using the year to do some GCSE work or A-level work at a local college. So they would also give that advice. And we have had students do that as well. So it depends. And it could be a combination of both those things, that we're able to keep in touch with them periodically as well. And then coming up to the matriculation, we might, it might be a bit more intense. It depends what the student's situation is.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Because sometimes people, will ask, well, how did you get into uni? And it's good knowing that there are other ways that they can get in, but definitely also to be helped as well. Yeah. And that advice and guidance from Mohammed and Denise is brilliant for those students. So if people are asking you, you can definitely refer them to, because I've referred in an appointment. I know you're a great ambassador for all of our courses. I want to get everybody learning. So that's fine. I just wondered if those figures were kept, and if they are kept, then obviously they'll be looking at them to see where there's different, and it's a good point that we could be using them perhaps in some of our communications with new applicants. And all right then. Thank you. Thanks, Bev.
Hi, any other? I see Tim has asked about find and engage learners via community settings. Tim, we discussed this in our first 2 conversations, which are recorded, the work that we do in outreach and in adult education. And you will get the recordings after we finish the conversations. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything regarding that.
Yeah, maybe just clarifying that the recordings are going out after all the conversations have been done rather than piecemeal. So then you'll have the whole set.
Yeah. And information on the Padlets as well from the breakout. So I know that some people were talking about ideas around that as well.
Beth, do you want to say anything about what Study Hire has been doing in relation to this? I'm not putting you on the spot, Beth.
Yes, you are.
I'll jump on that spot because I think you are really, but that's fine, Lindsay. No worries at all. No, hi everybody. It's nice to be here. So I work for a UniConnect partnership, essentially, which I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have probably come across. So actually there's another of my colleagues here as well this morning. And part of the change of our funding next year, as part of that change, the OFS has asked us to start engaging with mature students far more, as again, I'm sure you're all aware. And so, I'm joining the conversations at the moment to try and get a bit of a heads up on what people are offering, how the approaches are being made. And particularly talking about the differ, it's something that we're going to really have to do, is to try and engage with those communities and then direct them to all of your amazing support that's going on. So I think, there's lots for us to learn and to do. I actually was a student myself through the Open University, and qualified crazily now, nearly 5 years ago. But yeah, it was great. And I was really, I mean, I hadn't done anything, just to go back to what Bev was saying, I'd done nothing really since I'd left school. I'd done a few things. I had done an MVQ3 whilst I was in my early part of my career. And I was slightly showing off now, but I was really pleased to come away with a 2-1. Wow. And that was while doing a full-time job in a school. Thank you, Jenny. But, you know, I am really proud of it, and I'm really proud of it as a mature student. So I think everything that's going on is really great to hear. So, yeah, really keen to hear how we can help direct students towards the things that you do. And thanks for giving me the chance to say that, Lindsay.
Thank you, Beth. Just generally to do with how well people do, I mean, and those of you who are engaged in research might pick me up on this, but I think what the research shows is that there is likely to be more attrition with mature students than standard age students, which is not surprising given the complex lives of mature students. So mature students are more likely to drop out. But I think the research, Helen, shows that if people stay, then their achievement, their classification is broadly the same.
I think so. But you know, you always kind of feel like
I know.
Has the data overtaken us in, you know, since the last time I read about it?
Exactly, and goodness knows what changes the pandemic has meant. Okay, any other questions? Any other comments? It's good. It's really good to see UniConnect colleagues here, and it's going to. It's really good to see the OFS also, I have to say, put pressure on the universities and the partnerships to be working with adults. Okay, Helen, Jenny, have you got any comments before we think about breakup?
I think just that you know, it would be useful if anybody wants to put anything on the Padlet in response to Beth's question about how, you know, how institutions might use Study Hire, UniConnect, then that's, you know, that would be helpful for Beth as well, wouldn't it? It's a kind of useful part of the conversation.
Yeah. And I can see other colleagues who are here as well. Yeah, that would be really useful. Yeah. Okay. Well, if we've got no more questions, I suggest that we people have a break for, what should we say, Jenny? 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes?
Should we come back at 12?
Shall we come back? Let's round it up and say 12 o'clock, where you will be going into breakout rooms. So to discuss what's been presented this morning, but also very much to share. We really, really want to hear your own experiences, your own feelings. I think that the point that Helen took up about the terminology of belonging, which is very popular, but it you know, it is a contested term. I think it'd be very interesting to hear your views on this. So we'd like to see you back here at 12, where there'll be a scribe to work on and share the Padlet. Okay?
And we've put links to the Padlet and the password in the chat as well.
The links to the Padlet are, yeah. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
See you at 12.
See you
also,
at 12.
if you have to leave, you can also add to the Padlet if you want. If you have to leave now, it's there for you, just so you know.
Okay, I'll kick off with some comments, and then if people want to come in, these are really, really interesting conversations that you've had. And you will see with the 3 groups that actually they were really complementary. So giving a lot to think about. I was just going to comment firstly on group 3, where it looks as if you were talking a lot about the relationship and the transition between FE and HE, and the notion of bridging courses, which is such a good idea. And I can see that you're talking about something that would complement access to HE. But you know, what I was thinking of, because there's been such a reduction in adult education in FE, you know, it would be really interesting to see more bridging and transition, and obviously in consultation with local HE providers. And it may be there's been, not just has been a reduction in budgets, but during the pandemic, there's been such a reduction in adults undertaking adult FE courses in the main, you know, that you may, those of you in Uni Connect, you may find that there's real interest in your ideas in FE. I see that you also went on to talk about issues around BTEC and other qualifications that are not at A-level, I think, and certainly, no doubt, it was being talked about at that group that that's something that the University of Leeds has been looking at, is about the issues around recruitment from BTECs, and also then the support in relation to achievement for those people from BTECs. Group 1, I was looking to see the talk about working with adults prior to level 2, and again, that's the issues about how universities can support the progression of adults from a fairly low level, given again, you know, the issues around the fact that there has been reductions, and therefore the ladder for adults to progress can be an issue. So again, the more partnership, the better. I think you were also talking, were you, about, again, that business that Helen and Jenny were talking about, that mature students is such a disparate group, isn't it? So that some people may want to engage with another group of mature students, and others don't. And in fact, some students won't see themselves at all as mature. So that thing about flexibility, or people with a particular identity, such as maybe some of those with caring responsibilities, who really appreciate coming together to achieve support from each other. And I also liked in group 1 when you were talking about multiple points of connection, which is so important. And again, given where we are, having worked in the virtual environment and possibly going back, who knows, to more face-to-face, it's where these points, these digital and social media points, can enhance the ways of connecting. And I saw in group 2 you were talking about different modes of social media and the fact that different ages connect with different social platforms, and again, how that can enhance, or, you know, how you can't get away from, at times, you know, the importance of support from face to face. Right, I have done enough talking there, just points that I picked up on, and I'm conscious they were more at the beginning and the end, and there's so many good points. Does anyone want to follow me in picking up what is of interest, or those people in groups where what resonated with you? Joanne.
Yeah, hi. So just briefly looking at what group 3 were talking about, access students, the transition from FE to HE.
Yeah.
In our Uni Connect programme, we have our outreach assistants in our colleges with an HE provision. And I think initially when we were told by OFS that we would be working with mature students, we had initially thought that it was access students, and I think naively thought to ourselves, well, surely access students aren't the people that we should be targeting, because they've already made that leap to go on to those courses. But I think looking at that and thinking about the discussion that we've had, that we still need to reach out to those students, because I'm not sure what colleges are offering those students. All of our outreach assistants are level 6 careers qualifications, and I think we're mindful that although we are going to be offering that to the current FE students that are in access courses, or any of the mature ones, we probably need to tweak that, or maybe have some extra training around careers advice and guidance for adults. And I suppose I'm sort of reaching out to anybody about that. If anybody knows what is available in colleges. Obviously, I'll be speaking to my own staff about their individual institutions, but if there's any expertise in the room.
Does anyone want to come in at this point? Whilst people are thinking, Joanne, I think it really is a very good point, and there for some FE providers that have got their own HE provision, and particularly if it's quite large, then there are real issues about whether the people are given as much choice as possible, and I guess that's where you can, in UniConnect, really enhance what they're delivering. I mean, certainly our experience in Leeds, and if there's other FE colleagues, they may again say differently, but our experience in Leeds is that area, IAG, has been cut in FE.
Right. Yeah. So I think that what I'll be going back with is that really sort of exploring the IAG element of the FE access courses. Absolutely. And many other mature learners.
I think it's where, if you can come up with how you can show that you're you're not criticizing what they're doing, but how you can complement their service and add value to it.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne.
I was just going to come in on that, Lindsay.
Hi,
to
Livia.
Say, as Lindsay said as well, it's about that impartiality, and if you can kind of reassure FECs that it's not about kind of trying to poach or funnel students in particular directions, but because of the chronic underfunding and the lack of resource, our experience certainly this year, when my colleagues been working online with FE colleges in the region, is they're grateful for any input, because they're so stretched trying to deliver the programs, shift in this hybrid year between face-to-face, online, face-to-face, backwards and forwards, and that even without IAG being cut so much, there's very little capacity to do anything extra, and anything that we could kind of go out and provide and do talks on and support for, they were kind of biting our hand off, really. So as long as it's done with that real goodwill of impartiality and wanting the best for students, and whatever their outcomes are, wherever they end up, we've found people very receptive.
Yeah. And UniConnect is impartial, and
exactly.
Because they're already in those institutions, they're already offering that to the younger students. So like, you just sort of clarifying that really with them when we go into it.
Yeah, you're well placed.
Yeah, thanks.
Can I chip in there?
Yeah.
Thank you. It made me think about the different spaces where we have contacted with mature learners. For Go Higher, we actually set up an HE show in the shopping centre in the Ridings in Wakefield for 2 days, and we're literally there in order to have conversations. And early on in the NCOP stages, we were in community hubs and libraries, and those conversations were happening there. Quite often were with learners with very, very low qualification levels that just needed the next step to be able to work their way towards higher education. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. And that's why the guidance is needed, and people aware of what these steps are to support. But going into the likes of shopping centres And again, doing that as partnership activity is I think is a really useful way of connecting with people who wouldn't come to see, you know, who wouldn't be looking for it themselves, going to them. Yeah.
Thanks, you.
Martha. Anybody else? I'm looking at the chat. Facilitators got anything that they want to feedback? Anything in particular?
I think there was a really useful different discussions that we had around different experiences, and it's interesting looking at it from the institutional perspective and from the Uni Connect perspective, and maybe we could have explored further perhaps that how to connect the two together a bit more. But also Bev and Joanne sharing their experiences of studying as mature students recently, and the problems with the ongoing discrimination in terms of employer demands and internship demands, and just the fact that still goes on. And I liked the fact that Karen said at Brunel they do have priority placements for mature students in certain internships, which I think is a fantastic offer that you know all institutions could be looking at perhaps more. We have found, haven't we, that we've had some successes in challenging, but then as we challenge one, another bit of discrimination pops up. So yeah, I think it has to be ongoing. But I did try to reassure Bev that actually she has the most clout by raising it as students. That is the best way to get things to change.
Absolutely. If it is raised, then there are concerns, but because I mean, it's just they like the graduate schemes, they just do not think about it at all. So it is really, really important to keep raising it. And of course, with turnover of staff, it has to keep being raised. You know, you build a relationship up with one graduate scheme person and then they go and you have to build it again. But that is so much part of the whole learning journey, the employability side. Yeah, excellent,
Sorry, Helen and Lindsay, can I just sort of interrupt?
Yeah.
But the thing is, this has been going on for a very long time.
Very long time, yeah.
So my thing is, it's like everything.
Yeah.
Who is the people who decide we need a 2-1?
Yeah.
They're the why should I have to challenge them? Surely it's if they're advertising on the university, if these are on the graduate schemes and the intern placements and internship on the university sites. So I think even before I get to see it as a student, I think it should be challenged by the people who are actually allowing, whose job it is to actually speak to employers. Do you see what I mean? If I was,
no, I do, and it's something actually, I mean, one of my colleagues, Denise, has picked up on interns, and I think it was also, was it interns and sort of additional student experience activity that was definite age discrimination. And we picked it up with colleagues in careers. And you're absolutely right, Bev. I mean, I think we've got to be really, really alert to this. But I mean, it is, and yes, it's been going on forever. And we just have to be alert the whole time, because as I say, staff change all the time. So you may get somebody who's got some interest in it, but the fact is that people just see it, you know, in as standard. You know, people can be very blinkered in this respect.
Because we are talking about being more inclusive, so I think it starts from the beginning of your journey right through to the very end.
Well, I don't know if, Bev, you've seen in the paper, I think this week the government is looking at reviewing the civil service fast track scheme. And there's talk, and the opposition has been talking about it as well, because it is not, it's extremely exclusive at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, but ways of making it more inclusive.
So thanks for that.
So again, it's on the agenda. So how we can raise that, because people will at least at least respond about it at the moment.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other thoughts or comments, I am going to draw this to a close because we want to finish it at 1 o'clock sharp. So thank you very much indeed for your responses and staying and engaging in what clearly were really thought-provoking workshops. As has been said before, these recordings will be sent after we finished with the conversations events, and the Padlets, I think, will remain open. Isn't that the case? And people can continue to comment on the Padlets.
Yeah, the Padlets will be open as well, but we will be sharing everything after the last conversation.
So just to say that next week, which is our last conversation, which is about looking at intertwining widening participation, adult education, and civic engagement, all themes that we've been discussing in the last 3 weeks, and really reflecting on this. I think it will be a shorter session, and I am certainly open if anyone wants to get in touch to think about or would like us to comment on activity that we have not talked about, or if you've got thoughts on your own about that particular theme, please get in touch and we will try to include it next week. As I say, I think the session will be as open as possible. So can I thank Helen and Jenny for leading the session, and many thanks to all of you who've come. We, after this series of conversations are complete, you know, we would really like to consider doing more of these. And again, it's whether you'd be interested in joining us, so that the conversations are not just about what we in the LLC at the University of Leeds are doing, but trying to make sure that we really get the work with adults on the map, and do as much influencing in that way as possible. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming, and hope to see you next week. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming.